Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining today's episode of the Energy Espresso. I'm your host, Dave Bosco, and today we've got a transition episode. Is I guess the best way that we're going to state it. I've got a very awesome gentleman joining me today, Mr. Jim Wicklund. And Jim, how you doing this morning?
Very good, and I'll send you that check for the awesome comment.
Pleasure. Yeah, I'm more like a Mr. Wonderful. I want to get out of bed every morning and have a dividend coming. So as long as we can negotiate, some type of percentage on a perpetual basis, I'm cool.
That's good. That's good. I'll carry your bags if need be too to get the tail end of that.
I love it. That's first class service. Well, awesome. Well, Jim, we're coming together today because this is actually my last episode of the Energy Espresso podcast, and we're going to get into more of that. But I wanted to make sure people know you, obviously in the industry, and just maybe you can introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background and kind of what you do in the industry, and kind of take it from there.
I appreciate it, Dave. I have been in the industry for a little while. I try and tell people I'm 47 years old, just rode hard and put away wet, but nobody's buying it. So I started while I was in college working on a seismic boat offshore. And I realized I could be a scientist and be offshore a little bit. And so I went to work for Western Geophysical as a field geophysicist when I graduated. And in their little management training program, I found myself living in Australia and Beeville, Texas, and London, England, and a number of different places. I decided that the seismic industry was great, but what happens with all the data that we generate? And so I moved to Sun Oil Company. And Sun Oil Company had a group called Sunmark Worldwide Services, which basically was technical support for every place that Sun operated, mainly internationally. And so that took me to Libya and Algeria and West Africa and Southeast Asia and every place in the world. And that was very interesting. When Sun Oil was told it had to negotiate and pick up exploration blocks in Libya or lose the right to lift oil, I was given a footlocker from the 1950s and told to look at it. Then 2 months later, we found ourselves in Tripoli, Libya, where the head of the NOC pulled a sheet off an easel and said, "These are your 6 blocks." And my boss turned to me and said, "Are these the ones we want?" When I looked at him and said, "Why are you asking me?" He said, "You had the footlocker." And so that was my first real experience with the international oil industry from that side. It turned out that 2 of the blocks were on the Cyrenaica platform, which is a volcanic outcrop on the eastern side of the country. So they actually made it pretty easy for me. I said, we didn't want those and put them over in the middle of the Sturdy Basin. They said, okay. And I looked a whole lot smarter than I really was. And I've tried to parlay that into a career. I went from Sun to a petroleum engineering consulting company. I got hooked up with a group that tried to buy a New York Stock Exchange oil company. The day before the bear hug letter, GE suspended their natural resource lending. It's probably a very good thing. It would have failed. This was in the mid 80s. And I found myself on the financial services side as an analyst. And so for the last 30 years or so, I have been a research analyst, an investment banker, a hedge fund manager, and I tried to retire and that didn't work. So here I am. I'm currently managing director for PPHB, which is Oilfield Service and Energy Services Investment Bank in Houston. I've known all these guys since they put it together 20 years ago. They're the most reputable people I know. I was worried about my reputation. I couldn't believe they risked their reputation with me. And so today I write a little weekly piece. I'm a gadfly on the industry. I'm trying to push companies into the consolidation we think needs to happen.
Yep.
This is the only industry I've ever known. I love it. And so now I'm just trying to overcome social issues, financial issues, and debunking myths to try and do what little I can to make the industry as efficient as possible.
I love it, man.
Pipe dream, but somebody's got to aim at tilt at windmills, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, we all got to have our goals and objectives when it comes to the impact that we want to make, obviously, on the industry outside of what we do for our day jobs, right? And I think, especially with the political climate that used to exist, in all fairness, around energy and oil and gas, and where we're at today is, you know, natural gas is back in vogue because there is no other resource that you can tap into immediately, have firm generation power, and also it's highly efficient, very much so from an environmental perspective, friendly. Let's be honest. It's, organic matter that decayed over many years to form the gas that we have and the oil we have today. There's a recycled, kind of flavor to that in a big way.
We are the only country that is in compliance with the original Paris Climate Accords, even though we're not a member of the Paris Climate Accord. But because of our substitution from coal to natural gas, we are the only country that is in compliance. So the shift toward natural gas has been huge. If you weren't in our business, you kind of didn't notice. Now with the AI data centers, everyone is noticing. And so that's, I remember years and years ago when the natural gas rig count was 85% of all the drilling done. And Patterson Drilling said, we're no longer an oil field service industry, we're a natural gas service industry. We fluctuate back and forth over time, but clearly both commodities are in the spotlight today.
Yeah. And from your perspective, kind of starting out your career being, a petroleum engineer, right? And being at the front lines, kind of tip of the spear of evaluating offshore and overseas, plays that were being developed. I would imagine it's been really interesting to see how this has kind of transitioned, over your tenure into the industry that we are today. It's pretty cool to see how we've grown.
It is amazing, and the technology that's been brought to bear. Everybody looks at their computer and says, "Wow, remember what this was like 20 years ago?" And they look at their iPhone, which is less than 20 years old, and say, "Well, how did we live without it?" And I remember when PCs first hit the market, it didn't help the oil and gas industry because all of our programs and all of our calculations were so complicated that for the first 10 years of personal computers, we couldn't use them because they weren't strong enough. I remember when I had a Microvax 2 under my desk to do reservoir simulation runs, and that was a computer that wasn't allowed to be sold to Russia because it was so high tech. And so you look at where we are today and the technology that we have today and what it has done to the oil industry. I mean, I went from 1,800 drilling rigs in 2008 to 120 today.
Yep.
And gas production's gone up every year but one. We've gotten good at this.
Yeah. The advancements in efficiency, doing more with less, it's a blessing and a curse, right? Because the E&Ps, they benefit from it. And sometimes, unfortunately, the service companies feel like you're used as a means to an end. Sorry to digress into a Machiavellian concept
that's exactly true. That's exactly true.
But I've felt for a long time that there has to be this kind of balanced approach where the E&Ps start to recognize the investment, the hard, blood, sweat, and tears, the carnage that unfortunately has happened through various different ebbs and flows, and appreciate and recognize that the service companies are what got us here, right?
One hopes it happens. There's an article in the Wall Street Journal actually today talking about how Schlumberger and Halliburton, a couple of decades ago, were huge, big companies, and today, even though they're the two largest companies in the industry, $80 billion in market cap or so for them. It's just not the industry it used to be. They are as critical as they ever were. 20 years ago, Exxon, Chevron, Shell, BP, and all those used to have their own labs and technologies, and they could hold them hostage and use them exclusively. And they realized that they could farm those out to the Halliburtons and Schlumbergers of the world. The benefit for the industry is those technologies hit mainstream right away. And that's been a fabulous thing for consumers. It's, as you say, a great thing for the oil companies. But the service industry has had a very hard time getting paid for the value they impart. And I've been hoping that changes for a couple of decades now. But we're
Yep.
kind of getting down to the baseline capability. So I expect it to start to shine now. I really do. I'm not saying these companies are going to explode in value, but the technologies that they now have can't be denied. And the consolidation that's happened both in the E&P industry and the services industry makes it a much more legitimate business. I mean, if you look at what Boeing is today, and
Yep.
you look at the 64 companies that existed before that have been rolled up into Boeing, and so now you've got Airbus and Boeing, and you've got basically a duopoly in that industry, and that's where our industry is going to end up going.
Yeah. And a lot of people think that's a bad thing, but I think it's what we have to do to survive and be able to, be able to, have equal weight to counterparts to stay
Exactly.
healthy. And it's also cool too, because you're seeing a lot of companies, such as, the one I work for and the business that me and my partner Travis run, which is, a power business, oil and gas providers from a service perspective, even midstream companies like a Williams, right?
Yep.
They're getting into power. And because you know so much about the molecule and have that close proximity and those relationships, it's a natural, really interesting progression that's occurring. And I love just how quickly this market is advancing and proliferating into businesses changing who they are today and creating new avenues to get to the market. It's pretty cool.
I remember, 5, 6 years ago, where I'd speak to a group of oilfield service people, and they'd say, "Well, what do we do? I mean, our business is going down. There's nothing else we can do." And I said, "Well, there's actually a huge amount you can do. I mean, we work in remote locations in very difficult environments, and we have weatherized, rugged equipment, and you're talking about, all sorts of different businesses that we could be in." And everybody shrugged and said, "Well, I don't know what it's going to be." And then you guys, granted, were one of the first to notice the transition, and now, I think your stock was up 16% the day you announced you were going to do it.
Yeah.
And I remember another day it was up 24% in one day. And so we are no longer the oil and gas business. We are the energy and power business. Oil
Yep.
and gas is just one subset of that. And I think what you guys are doing and other companies are doing demonstrates that, which both investors and the company managements weren't sure of several years ago. And now you're proving that transition. I think that's very important.
Yeah, and not to drink my. I appreciate you saying that, Jim. Not to drink my own Kool-Aid, but one of the big, I think, pieces for me from like a employee perspective, I'm a believer of the upside down kind of pyramid. Right, management is at the bottom and is here to purely support and ensure that the folks that are the most important people, which are the guys in the field and gals in the field doing the work, being able to open folks up to new technology, advanced industries that they might have otherwise never been a part of before. It's really, really awesome to be able to usher in this new age that you can take folks that cut their teeth and have for years been very much so oil and gas centric focus. And now this broadened energy space allows people to have some really awesome upward mobility. It's just I can be a softie for people. That's one of my blessings and curses here. But it's really neat to be able to see folks have that ability to move into something new that has some staying power in these tangential markets.
I agree. The upside down pyramid was first pitched to me by Garish at Weatherford last year. And he said, "I think a lot of people have this wrong on how this pyramid is supposed to go, and you need to invert it. And the senior management is at the bottom, and everyone else is free to do what they can do." And I agreed with him completely. I agree with you completely. I think that's the best way to look at our industry today. And I remember for years people were talking about we'll lose the wisdom of all these older people as they retire. And to a large extent, that really hasn't happened. I understand technology and AI has stepped in, but AI is still too young to have had a big impact. But I think it was companies starting to operate on that inverted pyramid that gave people the freedom to develop and innovate. And I think
Yep.
that's been one of the most important things we've done as an industry the last couple of years. And whether all the companies realize the inverted pyramid is the way to go, they're going to operate in that way anyway, because
Yep.
that's the way the market is trending, and the
Yep.
successful companies are going.
Agreed. That you bring up that we always refer to in the industry as the big crew change, right? And we've had a couple of those happen throughout my career. I started in oil and gas in 2004, and the only reason I've got knowledge is because somebody invested the time in me to give their knowledge away. And I'm a firm believer you don't keep it unless you give it away. That's I think a false narrative that a lot of folks had anxiety about, but that's the human condition, right? We want to, pour into people what was poured into us. And I think that's also working the other way, right? Where we're hiring a lot of really new, fresh talent that, is very much so technology savvy, that isn't from our industry. And that's actually a good thing, because there's a
Right.
lot of different pieces that we can take from other industries like manufacturing and the aerospace side, right? Like the fact that you can trust with high confidence that that plane is going to take off, be in the air, and safely land. And they know, when they have to leave, when they have to arrive, the margin that they make on a per flight basis, the amount of fuel, the data that exists there is incredible. And, I really appreciate that we've embraced, as an energy complex, these other areas of business that can go ahead and help us be more efficient, do more with less, and I hate to use the word high grade, but high grade a lot of the talent to be in more technology focused
Yeah,
jobs, right?
it's right. According to the Society of Petroleum Engineers, the average geoscientist is like 70 years old. Now, the good part, we don't retire. It's the oil business, so we don't know anything
Yeah,
else to do. So, only a few
thousand
people I
percent.
remember when Joel Staff, retired from NOV as CEO of NOV. He said he was going to work on his golf game. A year later, he's back in the CEO role. He said his damn handicap went up by a stroke. If you've been in this business all your career, playing golf 3 times a week just isn't enough excitement. So a
No,
lot
it's
of
not.
people never leave. And because it is such a knowledge and science-based industry, that passing along that information, that wisdom, that experience is kind of incumbent on all of us. Because like you say, you got taught, and so you need to give back. And our version of giving back, it may be giving to your church or your school, but it's spending time giving your knowledge to people who are younger than you. And, we've got a dearth of people in their 40s. We got a lot of people in their late 60s and late 20s.
Yep.
And so there's so much opportunity to me for young people in this industry. It's just amazing.
Absolutely. And Jim, that's these kind of various themes that we're talking about are, kind of what I was very much so focused on the Energy Espresso, not just being, a couple of talking heads, right? Where, you're talking about today's, latest buzz. It's really the people behind it, and those leaders and individuals that inspire people and help, drive their business, and are pouring that knowledge into folks to go ahead and make their business, better today.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of reflect back and, look at, where this podcast started. And it's interesting. Kind of the backstory is I'm with Josh Lowry, which him and I grew up in the same neighborhood in North Texas, Roanoke Trophy Club area. Sitting with him and Mark Imicus, at Patente, coming out of a Astros game. And Mark is looking at me and he's like, Dave, I've been wanting to ask you something for a while. And I'm sitting here going like, oh crap, what's going on? Is this
What
going
am
to
I
be
trouble
a
for?
gotcha question? And he's like, no, I want you to, lead this new podcast that we're thinking about called the Energy Espresso. And I was like, huh, kind of caught me off guard. And so kind of contemplated on it a little bit, talked with Mark, talked with Josh, Kevin, the rest of the Upright team, and we landed on launching this podcast to kind of meld the world of coffee and energy together. And kind of looking back when, we actually launched the podcast was at Thrive in 2024, February timeframe. And I remember I brought this, one of these, I got a bunch of coffee machines, full disclosure, but I brought a espresso machine from my house because I was like, I don't want to give people like heating oil coffee. I want to bring a nice cup of coffee, and it's really cool to kind of reflect and look back on where you started and kind of how we got here, and then what the show is going to be under your leadership, Jim.
I have
It's
some very big shoes to fill. I understand that, Dave.
Yeah, no, not. I mean, listen, I'm first to admit I'm the dumbest son of a gun out of the smartest group of people, man, and that's where I like to live and
That's why
exist.
you're smart.
Um,
That demonstrates your intelligence, by the way.
I appreciate that. And I really look forward to, folks being able to engage further with where you're going to take the show and direction wise. It's been really, really fun to cover a lot of various topics. And I know, I can be all over the place because I move quick and that's just how my brain thinks. But that's where we're at from a market today. There is like no waiting time. People are moving
No,
so quick.
that is true. It is. Venezuela pushed AI off the front pages
Did it
in a
ever?
week, and now we've got other thing pushing Venezuela off the front page, and it is now a day to day industry. There are so many moving parts these days. It used to be what's OPEC going to do, and that's now the third or fourth question that's relevant.
Yeah.
And those three or four questions will change over the next 2 weeks.
They will. And that's counterintuitive to how we've operated as a oil and gas business in the past. I remember when I started in that 2004 timeframe and my background, I went to school for network engineering and just maybe I made the wrong decision, but I'm okay with the decision I made. Uh, getting into oil and gas, coming into a company, going through a 5-year program to learn the industry, learn the business, and kind of when that shale boom happened at that 2008 kind of time frame, and that inflection point of our industry, because a lot of people like go frack is new. Well, it's not. It's just that we were doing vertical, agitation of wells to go ahead and stimulate it to increase production. Where we moved in, since 2008 to where we're at today, the leapfrogging that has happened of this industry is phenomenal. It's phenomenal. And what we've unlocked in resources and set ourselves, up as the, de facto supplier of natural gas. It is going to be I think, most reliable feedstock of energy production since dung and coal. um, and it creates so many jobs and so much opportunity for people. It's really cool to see just how quickly things move.
I agree.
But I digress. Kind of the future of Energy Espresso, Jim. What's your vision for kind of where to take it from here, and what you see yourself covering, and whether it's topics or individuals, just to kind of share some vision for the audience.
Well, the weekly piece that I've written for what feels like 150 years is called "Things I Learned This Week," and I am always learning. I'm a voracious reader, and I talk to a lot of people, and I'm always trying to learn something because God only knows there's a whole lot I don't know. And so, to be perfectly honest, just expanding that. I want to talk about things I've learned. I want to ask people what they know and learn from them. So I get a soapbox every week in my weekly.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to discuss some of that. You'll have to forgive me for that soapboxing me, but it's the stuff that I, at least on a regular basis, find interesting.
Yep.
Sometimes there's little nuggets and pieces of information that I'm not sure everybody knows, and we like to impart those and amplify them. And then I've got an awful lot of people I know in the business, from power to nuclear, gas, oil. And as I say, we're no longer oil and gas, we're energy and power. And a lot of people say, well, what does that mean? And I want to have people come on and tell them.
Yep.
I can talk till the cows come home and impart the information to you. But there are some really smart people out there who are doing things and see things and hope for things. And they may not all come true. But if I know what your hopes and desires are, it makes it much easier to buy you that Christmas present at the end of the
Yeah.
year. And so my goal is really education. Um, Me pontificating doesn't mean much. All of us learning something does.
Yeah. No, I love it, man. On the learning piece, what's something new and fresh that you learned in the past couple of weeks that's pretty exciting?
Well, it's not exciting. I've learned in the last couple of weeks that the media has no clue how the oil and gas industry exists. And I'm not sure our president does either when he got upset with Darren Woods by saying that right now Venezuela is uninvestable.
Yeah.
The
So
comment
I
I
don't
got from
disagree
most
with.
people was, how come Darren was honest and nobody else was? That's the
Yeah.
comment I've gotten from most people.
Yeah.
Venezuela used to be the best international market for the oil industry and oil service industry that existed.
Yep.
But all that ended 18 years ago.
Yep.
And I don't think people understand when we talk about how, $100 billion will fix all this. Well, if you look at Exxon, Chevron, and Conoco, they're only spending $60 billion this year globally on everything they do.
Yep.
So the idea of just, I think I'll dump 20 or 40 million into Venezuela is absurd.
Yep.
There is no legal structure. I remember years ago when environmentalists got upset because Exxon was giving in Ghana the royalty money directly to the president's bank account. And everybody said, you've got to stop that. And they said, well, it's like you deciding you're not going to pay your taxes. Their constitution says that's what we do, so that's what we do. And everybody goes, oh, well, they need to change the constitution. It changed the perspective. And so until Venezuela changes their hydrocarbon law, which I'm sure we will assist in, no one can sign a contract to explore or produce in Venezuela that aren't there now. And that's only Chevron, to be honest with you.
Yep.
And so between the press conference the other day, which was excellent, a bunch of companies in there, Jeff Miller talked about how Halliburton went in there in 1938, which most people didn't realize there was an oil industry or Halliburton or fracking in 1938, and there was.
Yep. Yep.
And so lately it's just been trying this latest issue of my weekly was just trying to debunk a lot of the myths that the media seems to be missing on what needs to happen in Venezuela. And if you go back a couple months before that, it's how are we going to power data centers? Well, that's easy. We've got wind and solar. Well, you can't use them. And I've got friends of mine who aren't in the oil and gas business going, well, that's stupid. Why not? Well, it may be stupid, but it's just laws of physics. So you have to explain it to people. Yep. And I remember Mobil Oil used to have this editorial on the second page of the Wall Street Journal in what was very small font. We didn't know what the word font was at the time. It was just too small a print to really read. And the comment was that they need to be putting it into very large font in the grocery store National Enquirer, not in small font, the second page of the Wall Street Journal. And so it is going to be more and more obvious to people that hydrocarbons are needed for the future, whether you like them or not. We can phase out coal, that's fine, but you're not going to get rid of oil or natural gas anytime soon. And wanting to doesn't do it. It's like Mr. Trump saying, I want $50 oil. Well, I want to date with Miss America, but I'm not going to say that's going to happen anytime soon either. And so to a very large extent, there hasn't been a great education source in our industry. And to be perfectly honest, that's what I have always tried to be.
I love it, man. People don't appreciate how much oil and gas it persists throughout everything that we do, the clothes that we wear, materials that are in furniture. And I have conversations with some of my family because they're on the other side of the fence. They think I call it unicorn farts and fairy dust, right? This is magic. And you flip the lights and lights come on and it's all, renewable energy. Well, it's not. And, you've got more petroleum products throughout your life than you realize. And you start unpacking that with them. And, take the demons that everybody paints us with a 4-inch paintbrush and broad strokes and really boil it down to human lives have obviously improved drastically since energy, something that, Chris Wright has obviously talked about and, has his Bettering Human Lives platform. It's done fantastic things for, reducing infant mortality, creating upward mobility for folks.
Dramatically.
We just get, put in this box unnecessarily. And I love that, you're an advocate for the industry, Jim, and have a goal of making sure people have data and facts to go off of. It's important because you got to cut through the BS and make sure and educate folks to make a decision that actually is based upon data, not just feelings.
And the BS gets thick. I have a slide in my deck that shows the oil, just stop oil starter pack, and it's got the nylon orange vest and the oil-based super glue and everything, and their nylon backpacks, and they're saying they're being environmental because they're riding bikes with tires that haven't been made from natural rubber in our lifetime.
Yep.
And I've got another slide that shows everything that is made from oil. And the first time I showed that to a group of people not in the oil and gas business, they just accused me of being a liar and being dead wrong. So I put it back. I backed up a slide and said, "Okay, everybody, pull out your phone and start Googling a couple of these." And it was amazing how quickly the room went silent.
Yep.
So
it's incredible. On the Venezuela topic, kind of going back to that really quick. I think, look, there was a huge amount of companies that were burned in Venezuela, right?
Both in '89, the first nationalization, and then again in '07.
Yes, and in that '07 ringer, I was at a small business leading commercial at that point, and the write-off that had to be made because we were selling to drillers and stimulation companies and various different providers of services in Venezuela. And all of a sudden, a bunch of equipment that was sent over there and rebuilt components, we're sending invoices and it's like 120 days, 180 days past due. And they're going like, guys, we're kind of SOL. We can go ahead and negotiate, like paying you a percentage of that, but we're having to write off the loss. All of that equipment has essentially been possessed by, and I'm in my head, I'm going, how the freak does this happen? But I would say those scars of the past are exactly why I think everybody wants to be very, very careful going into these types of arrangements, because it's so destabilized at this point. We are stepping in as the United States to help kind of usher in some type of stabilization, but that also has to happen from a democratic perspective organically inside of that country where those people have representation. And I think if I don't blame Darren Woods for one moment. He's got his investors and his shareholders in mind, as well as the people that he's going to have to send over there to put into danger. Those folks in Venezuela have to control their own destiny before I think any businesses or other countries can step in and make a meaningful change, or else it's just, the same cycle is going to continue, right?
Exactly. And it was Conoco and Exxon who got a lot of the headlines because they got, they sued Venezuela in '07 for $22 billion on lost assets. But the service industry, I remember Insco and Helmerich and Payne and Halliburton and Schlumberger and all those guys, the equipment that they had down there, all the capital of any kind they had down there was lost. And there's been a couple of years trying to argue and get it back, and a couple of them got a rig back and they couldn't recognize the equipment when they got it back. So it wasn't just a couple of oil companies who got fried, it was the entire industry. And not only that, but they purged all the top technical people from Merivan and Petrovin and overall PDVSA. And they now populate the South American oil and gas industry. But in terms of people, I thought Darren Woods was very generous when he said, I can have a technical team there in no time at all. But when do I commit capital? Way too early to say. He was dead right.
Big time. Big time. No, that's what a leader should do, is shield people from those types of emotional decisions that, you don't have data and facts to go off of. On the Venezuelan topic, what conversation I've had for multiple years with folks is they're like, why are we importing Venezuelan crude? And a lot of folks didn't understand that, our refineries on the Gulf Coast and on the East Coast have predominantly going kind of inland up towards Canada, have predominantly up until, the advent of the shale revolution, been all based upon processing heavy crude. And
Well, we had spent huge amounts of money increasing the Nielsen complexity index because everybody knew the incremental barrel was going to be heavy and sour.
yep,
And so we spent billions and billions of dollars upgrading these facilities. Then we find shale, which is light sweet,
yep,
and it'll run it. It's just not optimized. So it's like buying a $250,000 car to deliver DoorDash.
yeah,
It works, but it's not the best use of capital. And
absolutely.
So that's been an issue. Do we like Mayan crude and Canadian heavy and Venezuela? Absolutely. Would I rather have that than light sweet? If that's what I'm optimized for, if I have that $250,000 car, I want to be ferrying CEOs and princes and kings from the airport, not delivering DoorDash. So that's
Yep.
the preference. But the idea that the U.S. is going to grab Venezuelan oil is just a joke. If you remember when we went into Iraq, we were doing it just for the oil, right? Just for the oil. In the ranking of the top 20 oil producers in Iraq, the first U.S. company is 17 on the list.
Yeah.
So you could argue that it was never the intent or we did a really bad job. And so the idea
I would say if that was the goal, we did a really bad job. That was obviously not the goal.
It was never the goal, and that's not the goal with this. And while Trump says it's about oil, it's about getting oil production back up so we don't have to subsidize Venezuela, that they can rebuild their economy with their own oil.
1,000%.
Yeah.
1,000%. No, I love it, man. I think from here, kind of, the personal perspective from my side, wanted to kind of touch on a couple of things and share like why is Dave stepping down, if that's fair, Jim.
Please.
And kind of where I'm at is, everybody, that listens to the show may be aware, my business partner, Travis, and I started up a business back in October 2024. And right now, the need for me to focus my energy and effort on growing the business and executing on a lot of the initiatives that we have inside of our business is important because of the folks that we're obviously employing and shareholders that I need to be considerate of. And it's just, the time that I have, and I don't get a lot of sleep, Jim. I'm usually like about a 4-hour sleep, maybe, guy per evening. Kind of having some of that, work-life balance as well.
Work life. I'm sorry. I didn't understand that term. Work life
balance. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. Work-life balance. I know that's, yeah, I know it's tough.
You're too driven, but it's a great goal.
It is. I got 2 kids that have, left the nest. And then 2 kids that are, not far behind that. I got 7 years, before my youngest daughter is, graduating high school, and just kind of taking that time to, make sure that I've got, the ability to focus on the business and then the family. It's important to me. Yeah.
Very correct priority.
But one thing I hope is that, there's opportunities if you're, ever need another, a talking head to come on and share his insights. I look forward to future collaborations and opportunities to highlight.
No question at all. I'm dying to talk about power with you. That's great.
I love it. That's what gets me outside of my family being number one, power. And, I had these, as a younger man, you obviously are like, man, I want to power everything, right? If I'm going to do something, it's going to be like this, right? But kind of, maturity and, a little bit of measure comes in and you're like, hey, we got a strategy. Let's execute on it. The beautiful thing about this industry from a power perspective, if you subscribe to the forecasts at 130 gigawatts just in the United States as kind of the top, at least on a crystal ball with some brisk adjustment today, to the low side of that being 60 to 70 gigawatts, like there is not one company that is going to be able to deliver all of that. And this is a beautiful opportunity for multiple businesses to be able to participate in this super cool industry that I think is going to continue to evolve and, innovate, especially with the experience, kind of as we were talking about earlier, that close relationship and understanding of the molecule. That's where I think it's really, really important for oil and gas companies and businesses that have been aligned with oil and gas to not lose sight. We're the ones that should be managing this transition
Right.
and ushering that next, revolution of power into the market.
I agree.
I like it. I like it. Well, I guess as far as closing thoughts from my side, Jim, I'm excited to see what you do with the show, and I think it's going to be in fantastic hands. It's a
No pressure.
bittersweet
No
moment for
pressure.
me.
No
Yeah, no, I
pressure.
mean, listen, you're the type of guy that when I came into this industry, I looked at and said, I want what he's got, right? And I know that's kind of a weird thing for me to say, but that's how I've always thought about, kind of looking at individuals that are well respected, have that knowledge, have that understanding. I think you're going to be a fantastic host for the show. Not think I know it. And the complimentary piece with your weekly note, I think, is going to make sure that you got the chance to have a little bit more of a platform to speak to folks, and also have some of those individuals involved in those various different topics on, so you can deliver the data and facts that is going to educate and call it evangelize the people for this industry, which we need more of that.
No question, and thank you for the comments. I appreciate that. I'm, the main thing is I've been doing this for a long time. I'm old. That's about the only real benefit I have. I've seen a lot, but they say with age comes wisdom, and I'm waiting. One day it's going to hit, and so keep holding your breath. I do want to mention that I think my inaugural podcast alone, actually won't be alone. It's going to be with some Baker Hughes people. It's going to be from Florence, Italy. We're going to go over for the Baker Hughes annual meeting
Nice.
and meet with some people there and find out what's going on with Baker, considering that they span as wide a wingspan of oil field service, energy, and power of most all the companies out there. So that ought to be interesting. And of course, there's the benefit of I get to eat Italian food for a couple of days. So.
Yeah, that I'll tell you what, that's not a bad trip at all going to Florence. And that annual meeting, from what I understand and hear, is quite the event and the accumulation of a lot of horsepower
Yes.
from an energy perspective. And with Baker Hughes and GE Vernova, and that relationship there, having the kind of like power piece of it integrated with that, I think you're going to have a fantastic time, Jim. And there's going to be a lot of really cool things to talk about there.
We're also going to have like their top 20 investors. Chase Mulvihill's the head of IR, and he said they're going to have like their top 20 institutional shareholders. And so It's going to be interesting to find out what the shareholders think of all this, as well as the company management.
That's going to be a really neat perspective, because you outside of like activist investors, which we could have a whole discussion about that. The actual people putting the capital behind these businesses, that would be really, really a really cool perspective to get. What do they see?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love it, man. I love it. Well, Jim, I appreciate you very much, and I'm going to be signing off, but we'll be staying in touch.
Thank you a lot. Like I say, big shoes to fill. I'll do my best. I promise.
No, you're going to do fantastic, man. And appreciate everybody participating and joining the Energy Espresso on a regular basis. The folks that have listened to this podcast, as well as also the guests that have been on this show, are the reason that we exist. Shout out to the folks at Upright Digital. They were the vehicle that made this happen, and really appreciate everybody very much. And feel free to reach out to me. Still going to be active on LinkedIn and in the show circuits and in the industry. So look forward to seeing what comes next.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Jim. Cheers, everybody.